What's up, everyone? This is Karak with ACG. Sit up and take notice, VR headset owners. Your rings of head-wrapping nerdiness plus 10 may actually have a reason to be removed from your mannequin heads on your bedstand. Hell, you might even have a reason to stop playing Tilt Shift and VR Pool. Now, why is that? Because another space shooter's launched into the fray of 3D Death Blossom Last Starfighter-like games. You see, where other games try to be everything, House of the Dying Sun, which used to be called Enemy Starfighter, is indeed just about one thing: a series of missions in a spaceship, shooting, shaking, frying, juking, spinning, barrel rolling, and blasting enemies, and pretty much that's about it. It's really more Starlancer than Freelancer if you're old like me, and it aims to add a bit of roguelike, a bit of VR, and a whole lot of action to the genre. The nice thing is the game covers everything, and if you have no VR headset, it doesn't matter because it also plays just fine on a normal monitor. Hey, so without further ado, strap on your helmets, engage your thrusters, clean out the blood from the previous pilot from your seat, and strap on in. It's time to see how House of the Dying Sun did. As always, if you liked the video, maybe subscribe. So here's the review for House of the Dying Sun. Dying never looked so good, VR or not to VR, and the ecstasy of slip drifting under the enemy ship, turning on its 6 and watching your missile pinata the enemy in glorious particle goodness. Graphics are up first. It's pretty nice because as a game that's played in or out of VR, Dying Sun looks pretty damn good regardless of the form factor and the functioning. Space locations are suitably busy with nebula blinding you in the backgrounds and assorted asteroid fields just begging to be the locations for some haphazard Han Solo moments. On a normal monitor in normal mode, the game runs very well, rocking fairly solid frame rates throughout, and no matter if particles are showering around you and little bits of enemies burning up like organic nightlights, or you're just flying way too damn close to a friendly ship and noticing its thruster ports look kinda cool. It holds up well. However, remember that since this is a VR title, some concessions have to be made to the main game, which means it is a bit clunkier looking than you might expect from a space game with slightly lower polygon numbers than, say, some other titles. Additionally, if you jump into VR mode, I have a GTX 980, and for the most part it was fairly solid. There was one or two times where it did give me a frame rate warning, but in the end, I would say a little bit of optimization is probably going to go a long way with this title. While in normal mode it looks good, once you strap the VR helmet on, holy shit. The folks at Marauder Interactive, and there aren't that many to begin with, have nailed the VR cockpit. Immersion is just rock solid and a multi-layered thing of beauty. The insides of the ships really remind you of a mix of the analog scariness of the Battlestar Galactica Vipers that felt like they were going to fall apart at any one time, with a bit of future rubbed off into them, and they shift and rock subtly as you maverick and goose your way through any of these levels. They're also just really designed intelligently enough that they have these large open areas to the rear right and rear left, allowing you to not only fly using the instruments, but look back and check enemy vectors visually as well. Now, visual damage is brought to you by Cracked Window Process Incorporated, and as it spreads across your vision, there is something really absolutely terrifying about knowing that the only thing that separates you from absolute zero space is the same thing that people fly through when two vehicles hit each other going about 1/100th the speed. Now, the ship itself shows damage in various small ways with different particle effects that grow as you get more and more damaged until finally you just explode. Looking at the effects though, one that I particularly love and I absolutely have to tell people about, it might drive folks nuts though, is the absolute blinding and bleaching effect a star or celestial body can deliver in the game. Well, this not only adds immersion, it also aids gameplay in being a mixture of both reaction and instinct at times, and requiring you to sometimes use the tactical view. Now, in a VR headset though, it can be shocking the first couple times you see it. But the real question I have is, are enemy AI actually impacted? Because you certainly are. Now, of special note are the massive ship shields and their globular effect as well. When in VR, you can fly under them and through them, and there's something so unique about that depthy pass-through and presentation that you don't see in a lot of titles. While all of this looks good on a normal monitor, the 3D effect and process done here absolutely nails immersion while in the headset, and once again we see that difference between atmosphere and immersion. You know, when it comes to artistic representation, space games can sometimes be difficult when it gets past that how many polygons have been used for the ship moment. House of the Dying Sun does a pretty good job of differentiating itself with crunchier ship outlines for smaller ships, while the larger ships have more of a tubular look that I like, and it reminded me of some of the larger alien vessels in Robotech. I guess as a summary, I'd say the game looks wonderful, and it's a smaller title, and I think you need to expect that, and when you're on the monitor, you're going to need to understand the caveats that VR games may bring to a title, but it looks pretty good to me. Sound, music, and voice. And of course, sound is always up first here. It's good, from the muted bump of thrusters reduced in tonal range to that bassest, lowest reverberating thump, to the far more powerful explosions of the larger battleships right off your wingtip, exploding into fiery debris. It's all really well done. Now listen, most of this stuff wouldn't be able to be heard anyway, because, well, space. But in the end, it's more about immersion for the gamer than scientifically perfect realism. 3D sound's done really well, and you can easily tell where shots are coming from and their direction in 3D space. It's not award-winning, but I think it's very good sound for a smaller title like this. And that brings us to music. You know, both percussion heavy and ambient synth lead the way here, and while many tracks absolutely bring home and deliver a Battlestar Galactica vibe, right down to the more natural and tribe-like skin beats, it's the occasional long-play synth that I love so much in many of the menus, but since the game is not ever about just flying around, you don't get to hear that as much. I think some people may complain that the music's a little close at times to Battlestar's unique battle music, which frankly, it was, and that music's highly original and it's easy to see the comparison here. I get that. I agree, but I also really like the music. Voice. There's almost nothing there but the lightest of audio radio chatter. So let's move on. Gameplay. First up, a little bit about story. Well, there really isn't one. You get a title scroll for a couple seconds about destroying some traitors and a dying emperor, and you're pretty much off. The game revolves around almost all roguelike gameplay versus any depth to its narrative. So while House of the Dying Sun is a basic space cockpit shooter, it's absolutely not lacking in depth. Now, sure, you basically just pick a mission, some weapons you can outfit, and of course upgrade as you defeat missions on various difficulties, but once you get into the battle, it is not all dumbed down. First, while the controls are spot on, and it says it can work with a 360 controller, which is usually my pad of choice, the game has far too many control, mission, and tactical options to be played that way. If you're in VR, since you can't see your keyboard, to hit the shortcuts is even harder, so I switched out to a joystick, assigned about 12 buttons, and jumped in, and I found that fairly usable. But I do have to be honest, make no mistake, with the ability to command wingmen, target subsystems, switch to various weapon types, drift around with Newtonian physics, jump into different fighters, and so much more, it can take some getting accustomed to no matter what you're actually controlling it with. Now once you jump in, brought into battles by an especially awesome zoom-in camera in a title Burnout, you're balls to the wall from that point on. Controls spot on, and I tested it with the mouse and keyboard, joystick, and of course the 360 controller, as I said before. And man, there's just a ton to do here. You're able to engage and disengage drift at any time, basically shutting down the you don't know how to fly right thrusters that newbies use and go about your business asteroid style with guns. And each engagement is a growing stable of AI mates and an enemy that's usually entrenched in some kind of position. And because missions are timed, if you don't take them out and go over that time limit, a massive capital ship enters the fray, you get a quick warning that you're basically outgunned, and if you don't make celestial skid marks and jump warp out of there, quick work will be your new call sign, because that's what the enemy's going to make of you. Now each engagement has difficulty levels that offer more resources to buy weapons and special items for your ship, like armor-piercing rounds, or even change the basic configuration. However, above all this is the tactical mode that sort of sets Dying House apart. At any time you can jump out, slow down time, and order fighters in a more succinct and far less oh shit, help 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 style of management. Really, getting through the harder difficulties also demands you do this, at least somewhat in some confrontations. And speaking of difficulty and AI, the game is no slouch, absolutely no slouch at all. It's ruthless and not yet cheaty, as far as I can tell at least. They're just really good, they use their weapons the way they should, and revel in your fiery demise. The game currently offers 14 scenarios, 3 difficulties each, and numerous rewards for what you choose. Fun factor. You know, the devs of Elite and Star Citizen always remind me a little bit of struggling shoe salesmen trying to get that size 10 on a size 14 foot. Dying Sun wants to be one thing and one thing only, a roguelike space shooter with excellent VR capabilities. And I have to say, due to the way the engagements are styled and hand polished, the fun factor is high in this one, no matter which way in which you engage it. So I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch rating scale. At $19.99 and 10% off for the first week, I absolutely think this is a buy. The developers are watching closely. They fixed a bug I had in a couple hours and posted a new update. Not all games need to be all things, and we as gamers have finally seen the light of day, breaking past some of the almost overshadowing titles that want to throw everything at you, and the really, really depressing titles that are barely anything. They're just sad playgrounds and many demos and life experiences where everybody wants full charge. Here we get a game that has plenty of playability and yet doesn't ask for a full game price. It knows what its audience wants, and it seems to have played to that strength. So as always, if you guys like the video, give it a thumbs up, check out Reddit, Patreon, what have you, maybe tweet about it. If you dislike the video, give it a thumbs down. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.